enough, and by that I mean it wasn't funny because I felt bad, with all the crap that was going on that day, and you don't need all the details, but there was a lot going on this day when we started talking about conditional relative frequency tables, and a lot of us were confused because I didn't say enough, right? I was trying to give really short answers so we could move on. Most of the time when we see a conditional relative frequency table, we total up everything. So the first lesson that we did looked at just row totals. The second lesson that we did looked at just column totals. But when we're using two different variables or two different questions that could either of them be the condition we want to talk about, we want our 100% to be at the bottom right of the table. So in a table like this, you'll notice that if I add up the column here, and I add up this column, that's where I get my 20 and 80%. Now these aren't great because how it looks, but when we're doing conditional relative, normally we have a 100% at the bottom right-hand corner. So we already checked these homeworks, and I don't know that any of us need to check the closure because there is no answer key for the closure. It's in your book or just on the ebook. But we'll get to checking 811 tomorrow. But if you want to talk to me about conditional relative frequency tables, come see me. It's easier when we chat with each other. The problem is you can do a lot and it's still right? There's not unless you use the data incorrectly, it's not that it's wrong. It just depends on what you're trying to model. So for 811 today, we're going to dive right into the lesson. Hope that we have some time left at the end for people to work on homework and or finish the Chapter 7 Mastery if we still need a few minutes on that. So, you're going to need graph paper. You might want a ruler to act as a straight edge because we're going to draw a couple tables and a couple graphs. Well, then wouldn't you need two pencils? If you're going to use your pencil as a straight edge, wouldn't you need two? Okay. Or, I mean, you could use a ruler. If it runs out of rulers over there, I got a bunch of rulers up here. So we clean graph paper out. Head it. Put a header on it. 811 patterns. Now, before we dive into, before we dive into this, after we dive into this. So I have a TED Ed video that's about 5 minutes long. And it deals with patterns and conspiracy theories. So I thought as we start looking at patterns, now this is not exactly what we're talking about with our lesson, but it is a very interesting math problem. Let's save it for the end of class though, because I'd have to stop my recording and then the video's all glitchy and we got people out on quarantine. So we'll watch it at the end of class. I'll set an alarm on my phone to make sure we actually get to it. So, between all of 7th grade, there are people out. Let's not try to name person to person because that's a FERPA violation. So, if you chat with your teammates and make really simple, don't have to have labels, maybe have a couple labels, but if you know which is the x-axis and which is the y-axis, I want you and your team to try to talk about what these graphs would look like. So for A, the month of the year compared to the average daily hours of sunlight in the northern hemisphere, which is where we live. So, if you don't know how daylight changes through the year, talk with your team, and if your team still doesn't know, you can send somebody to another team or lean over and ask somebody. But you have to decide what do you think would go on which axis and why. So I want to give you probably 4 minutes until 2:30 to try and make some quick sketches of what these would look like. Because then we'll get back to formalizing graphs with labels and numbers and stuff like that. So try these out. We're just going to look for patterns and see what do we notice. Stop. Why do you do something and then look at me like you're waiting for me to tell you to stop? So you could also ask, do we have more or less sunlight right now than normal? What is normal? Depends what month you would say is normal.
I would say around.
So remember, we don't have to have numbers necessarily. If I should be quiet. That's not true. We're not talking about temperature. We're talking about hours of daylight.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, because like warm and cold.
What? You keep talking about temperature.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense. No, it's Seattle's Eastern time or Western time. Then Alaska's like a little farther, and Seattle's 3 hours behind.
Where do we normally put time? On the
both
x-axis.
Oh, they're both times.
So if we started here, January, and we made December over here. The month of the year compared to the average daily number of hours. Now I could flip my axes, but we said time normally goes on the x.
They're both times.
Do we have,
They're both times.
well, hours of sunlight? Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but do we right now have more or less sunlight than in the summer? Less, right? It gets dark at like 5 or 6 at night. We're getting longer now again. Do you know when the shortest day was?
December 23rd.
Spencer? Yeah, somewhere right around there. I'm not 100% sure, but it was in December, right? So our January graph is going to be fairly low for hours of sunlight, and then it increases through the year, and in summer we kind of plateau for a little while, and then we come back down, and December would be our lowest point, right? So are we okay? Well, so that's a great segue. This is not a linear graph, right? Because the amount of daylight change actually changes every day. So we're not going to go deep into this question today because it does not matter. Like, we don't need to go deep into it. All we need to know is that in the summertime, we'd have a higher graph. In the wintertime, we'd have a lower graph. And it probably curves. You no longer get to have this. So, the number of months money has been invested compared to the total balance for a bank account this says a lot. Simple interest. This almost sounds like the bad word. Anyone know why we call this simple interest? And like what we might compare it to? Nevin, I can't tell if that was a hand or not. Okay. There is simple interest, and then there is compound interest. Should your money be going up or going down if you have it invested in the bank?
Up. Wait. It should go up.
Not the stock market, but the bank. When you invest in the bank, you are signing like an agreement saying, here are the terms of this bank account. So if this is my money, I should be increasing, right? Like my money should be going up. And if I leave it there, it should keep going up. A lot of your parents have done this with a college fund. Is they can take money straight out of their paycheck before taxes get taken out, and they can put it into a college fund for you. When you're an adult, you can do the same thing with like medical expenses. You can take money out of your paycheck that can only go to medical expenses, and you put it in like a health savings account or something like that. So that's like how I paid for my heart surgery. I had years of health savings account just sitting there.
That says math literacy affects 8 out of every 5 people.
You're right. It's a bad joke like me. I know it's a bad joke like what I like to make.
Yeah, but 8 is more than 5.
Get it? Math illiteracy.
That's like saying every time like there's 10 people in the building. Every time 5 people walk in the building, 8 come out. Where did the 3 people come from?
You're right.
Are they from another multiverse?
Max, you're making the point of the poster, but what you're also making the point of is that you're absolutely not paying attention to what I'm talking about up here. Do you think, based on the conversations we've been having, that you might want to engage a bit more in what I'm teaching you? Like, you know, so when we go to do slope or something like that, we know it right the first time? You're right. I am. Because you put the spotlight on you by, like, derailing my lesson right now. So, Max, have you drawn any graphs in your notes?
Yes.
So you have, like, graph C. No, but Max is obviously distracted, so that's why I'm calling him out on. He's not done with this problem. I don't understand why he's distracted. Wait, so graph C says the cost of an item that has had its price repeatedly increased by 50%. Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. We're going to circle back to this. And then D, and there's a reason I'm not drawing either of these up there right now. D, the length of the base, I wish they would just say the base. The length of the base of a rectangle that has an area of 24 centimeters compared to its length.
What?
We'll circle back to these. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry, we'll circle back. All right, so on your paper, you at the very top of it, which I got to flip back over to that paper if I have a copy. I don't know if I have my copy over here or not. 811, do I have it? Good. That's on purpose. Guys, remember, and actually my Math 2 class is having issues with this right now, and I've had to kind of sternly tell them to quit being so cocky because they're not as smart as they think they are. Some of you are having that same issue. But where this comes into play here is confusion is fine. Some of you want to freak out as soon as you're confused. Confusion is step 1 of learning. Go ahead, Gus. Don't push so hard. What did that thing do to you? If you push hard enough that it shuts off, you're pushing too hard. On your notes paper, you have this. Simple interest, which refers back to question B, right? Simple interest is interest paid only on the original amount of the principal, well, there's a word we don't know, at each specified interval, such as annually or monthly or weekly or daily, but most simple interest wouldn't happen daily. The formula to calculate this is, and it didn't fit very well up here, so I dropped it down here. Guys, this is going to be like gold. I would highlight it, circle it, star it, do something, or all of those things. No. Well, I mean, you can use any of those over there, but these are mine. Because I'm not trying to clean off my highlighters after every class. I stands for interest. And interest is money made off money. Sadly for you, interest rates are garbage right now. That's a really good thing for me, though, because I just refinanced my home loan, and now I'm only paying 2% interest on my house. 2%. Very good. When my parents bought their house, interest rates were about 17%. Yeah, how's that for comparison?
I don't understand anything.
That's why you're at, like, I don't know, a building with teachers and people to educate you. P stands for principal. It means Mr. Flint. No. It means the amount we start with. But, hey, a lot of people get confused by this. It is spelled the same with PAL. The financial word principal is spelled P-A-L. But if we talk about the fact that I tell the truth and that's a personal principle of mine, that's P-L-E. There are two different, actually there might be more ways to spell it than just two, but principal financial terms is P-A-L, like the principal of the school. Because he's your pal. Did your elementary schools ever do that when you were learning how to spell principal? R. R stands for rate. Notice how there's extra space here? R stands for rate, which is the decimal form of percent. Rate is the decimal form of percent. Well, good thing we'll practice these problems, and after you practice it a couple times, you won't have to memorize anything. It'll just come to you. And T stands for time. But time is always dependent on what interval we have been told. So I would draw an arrow from time up to the word interval. You have to know what intervals we're talking about. Questions on those words we just wrote down. The last word I need you to get on here is then if I take the money that I made and add it to the money that I started with, what's that word called? Nevin? That's if I get interest on top on all of that I just added up. So if I apply my percent to that sum, that's compound interest.
The sum?
Close. Starts with a B. Also, if I'm standing on one leg, it is the balance. Because balance. Is it A-N-C-E, E-N-C-E? So balance is the word that we use financially to mean what do you have at the end. So we'll come back to this paper. Keep it out. You need your graph paper now. I just wanted to make sure we got all this written down. Put your pencil down. Yeah. What do you? I have no idea what you're nitpicking of mine. I feel like you're wasting time, but I don't know, man. Type it in the computer and see what it says, or see what it does. On graph paper, well, sweet, good. I was waiting to find it in the lesson. I was like, I'm sure we'll see it. So, put your pencil down for a second. If I take $1,000 to the bank, and this is good because this actually uses 2%, and I try to, like you, let's say like grandma, grandpa, somebody gives you $1,000, and they're like, hey, put this in the bank so that it's more money than that when you get to college, right? Lots of grandma and grandpas do this. So, they say, take your $1,000 that we gave you, invest it in the bank, and the bank starts So the bank offers you 2% interest. But what does percent mean? Out of 100, and 2 divided by 100 makes 0.02. You leave it there. Now this doesn't work for the grandma-grandpa situation. You leave it there for 2 months, and it makes interest every month, right? The bank says, like, first of the month, interest. Which actually, I had an alarm on my phone today that said, pay your credit cards. Because literally, I put stuff on my credit cards to get points and miles, and I pay it off. Because if I don't pay it by the 10th, I'll get charged interest. I'm like, I might actually pull my bank account, because when I miss it, when I forget, interest on like a month of me putting charges on my credit card might be like $35. And that's just wasted money. That's the bank charging me to borrow money. It's stupid, because I have the money. I just put it on the credit card, so I wanted to get some airline miles. But if I forget to pay it, they charge me. Interest works both ways.
It's bad and good.
So, this tells us that after 2 months, Oscar now has made $40 off what he put into the bank.
Good job, Oscar, though.
Right? That's pretty solid. But it's off of like $1,000 initial investment. That's a big initial investment. Really? You thought what? You're thinking about compound. That's why this is called simple. That's why this is called simple. Because it is kind of simple to do. So if your brain is thinking that this is going to be super complex, it's not. Maddie, was that a hand? I can't tell what. You like doing a sun salutation?
Could you, like, if you get interest from the bank, could you earn interest on that interest?
That's compound interest. So if your account gets simple interest, the answer is no. You can only earn money on what you started with. Does that make sense? Because that was the only your money. As soon as the bank has put money into your account, that's their money that they added to your account. They're not going to pay you extra money on the money they gave you, but your credit card does the opposite. And so, guys, let's play this out. If I put $1,000 on my credit card,
That's a lot.
and I have, let's say, like 17% interest, which is actually low for a credit card. It's normally like 20% interest. So let's say 20% interest, actually. So at 20%, what's 20% of 1,000? $200. Now here's the thing about how this interest works. That's actually 20% for the year. So if I leave that $1,000 there for a year, I'll end up paying 20% interest on it. So what actually really happens, and I'm paraphrasing, somebody on the internet is going to like find this video and be like, dude, you're wrong. And yes, I am. So I'm talking to 12-year-olds about something you don't understand yet. So let's say in 1 month, now they charge me, like I just said, 200 divided by 12. Who's good at math? What's 200 divided by 12?
A big number.
You have a calculator right there. 16. So let's say $17 gets added to my credit card bill. Now, next month, when they go to charge me, if I have not paid off my credit card bill, now they're going to charge me for $1,017 at 20% interest, because the credit card companies are scams. And not really a scam, but like you read the fine print. You sign an agreement that says, yes, I agree to all this. And I actually like am ready to put up a bulletin board with a bunch of this information, but I wanted you to know about it first. So before we talk about any of that, we're going to deal with simple. We're going to deal with simple first, because compound interest is confusing. It's complicated.
What happens if you never pay interest?
They will come and take your house away. I'm not joking. They will come and start repossessing your stuff. Yeah, because you signed an agreement. So what ends up happening is normally you have to have a credit score and something of value that can be like collateral, if you've ever heard that word. So if I want a big loan from the bank, which I've done this. I wanted to redo my kitchen. I didn't have the money to do it. So I went to the bank and I said, hey, look, I own this house, because I don't technically own it yet. And I said, look, give me a loan for $10,000 and actually they gave me up to $30,000. I only used $10,000. If I don't pay it off, you get my house. That's how it works. Yeah. Or your car, or your whatever. Or your laptop, or your flat screen TV, or your whatever.
They'll get something equal value to your loan, usually higher.
Mm-hmm. They'll come with a tow truck and tow your car away, like while you're at work. Like, yeah, they're crazy. Anna? No, so that I charge $1,000. Credit is always me borrowing money. Credit is me saying I don't have money. Swipe. You might be mixing up credit and debit cards. A debit card is I have the money, take it out of my account. Hey, some of you that are talking don't know what I'm saying. So if you want to be smarter, zip it and listen. A debit card. And this is the problem. They all look the same.
They do.
A debit card. Cover up some digits so in case anyone can zoom in. Debit card has a magnetic swipe, has a chip. This is money. I have money in an account. This is like a gift card.
Cash money.
A credit card, this won't be any surprise to anyone. Home Depot credit card is me saying, I don't have any money with me today. Can I please just swipe this and pay you later? Credit card, pay you later. Now, why you use certain credit cards, and this is my fancy one we talked about when we were doing stuff out in the family room, this gives me miles. And if I swipe this, it's like giving me airline miles, so I can go fly somewhere. But this has puppies on it because they make donations to the Capital Area Humane Society. So my debit card actually helps the Humane Society.
Is that the one you use the most?
Shut up. Go home and ask your parents how many credit cards they have. Let's do that experiment today. Go home and ask your parents how many credit cards they have. I'm not joking. So we can continue this conversation tomorrow. Brenda?
So, would you pay off your credit card with your debit card?
You'd pay off your credit card with money that you have in your bank account, which is money that could be on your debit card or just sitting in an account somewhere. Because you can have a savings account, a checking account, you can have various types of accounts.
How do you tap into each of those accounts on your debit card?
Log in and move money around.
Okay, got it.
That sounds cool.
Aiden?
Isn't like a checking account like where all your checks get sent to?
Yeah, most people don't use checks very often these days. But so this, and guys, we might not get through the lesson today, that's fine. This is a check somebody gave me. This is cash money. But it's not actually cash money because it's not cash yet. If I go to cash this check, which cash, normally you just put it in your bank account, and it bounces, that means they don't have the money in their account. And one of two things will happen. I either just can't cash the check, and they're like, oh, so sad, too bad for you. Or the bank will still cash the check, but then they'll go after that person, and normally that person has to pay a fee because the bank covered for them. It's like if you go out to eat and you realize you forgot your wallet, and you're like, crap, Max, can I borrow 20? I'll get you back tomorrow. But Max is going to be like, ha, you want to borrow my money? You got to pay me back 25 tomorrow. And I'm like, well, bro, I don't have any money. Okay, fine. I'll pay you back 25 tomorrow. That's like interest. Right? If you don't have money and you got to borrow it from somebody, they can charge you more.
I'll pay 20. I'll pay you back 20 tomorrow. Ha! No, you're paying 100 tomorrow.
I mean, or you could say every day until you pay me is another $2 or something
Jake,
like that,
Jake,
right?
I'll dump out all my money in front of you out of my wallet and then show you and say, sorry, there's no cash on me, and then put it back in.
Anna. Yeah. These lessons always bring up a ton of questions. You're good. Don't apologize.
Pay them
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, aren't they like kind of like betting on the fact that you'll probably forget to pay it?
Yeah, because that's what most Americans do, except they don't forget. They intentionally just say, oh, I'll pay it next month. I'll pay a little bit this month. I'll pay more next month.
Because I was gonna say, because if they're holding on to your money, then you're eventually gonna get that back. So they're just
So if you have a credit card, right? So let's figure out this terminology. Guys, we gotta write a couple things down. Actually, I realized. Write down the word credit.
It's like doctors. Doctors get paid if you get hurt. Something.
Or be like Chris.
Credit is borrowed money. And actually, in accounting terms, it gets written in red.
Why?
oh, because it goes down.
Well, that and do you know what positive numbers get written in? Black. This is why we call it Black Friday.
That it's the day where they actually like got all the.
Get back into a profitable place for the year. Debit is my money that I pull out. So my money like on a card or in an account. Like really it's my money from a card or accessed by a card.
So Mr. Hudson's money accessed by a card?
I mean, if you took my debit card and I told you my PIN, then yeah.
Yeah,
It's
not
What you said to me, that's not gonna happen ever.
Mr. Hudson, what's your favorite 4-digit number? So, here's the deal. If I put money in the bank in a specific type of account, I can make money. But most people are borrowing money in short-term loans, essentially, on the credit card. And if you don't pay it back at the end of the month, depending on the card that you have and the agreement that you made, they're going to charge you extra. The first situation we're going to talk about is you put money in the bank. Also, Oscar put money in the bank. So, at 0 time, that is when we start the graph. Go ahead and draw an XY axis on your paper real quick.
Does that be that big?
No.
Can I do it on like 3x3 or how big do you want it? 5x5?
Just big enough that we can draw like 3 or 4 months on it. I mean, whatever you want to. I'm not going to check this. Guys, make your own choices. That or try to copy this. This is so funny that like my goal as we get further into the year is for me to like restrict you less, and you guys are asking for more and more. Like, well, tell us exactly how to do this, and it's just kind of funny. Lily. Lily.
What's like the highest number that we're going to be using in this problem?
That depends how far we go. So, guys, I'm being a little bit coy right now because you can figure this out. How many months did he save his money and how much did he make? In 2 months, he made $40. So in 1 month, he would have made 20. You guys remember, you can scale your axis however you want. You can scale by 20. So if you want every box to be worth 20, that's fine. Please stop. That's how those get broken. What you're doing is how those get broken. So 2 months would be 40. 3 months would be 60. And we quickly start to see this looks like a pattern. What's it look? Linear, right? It's making a straight line. Unlike some of the graphs we talked about at the beginning of the lesson, this looks like it's going to be a straight line. Because it will be. Every month, Oscar is going to get $20 if he leaves the money alone. Oh, in this problem, we leave it alone. But Oscar wants to know something. Yeah, he does. Where he wants to go to school, right? Because we said grandma and grandpa, what I don't know. Combine this in your head however you want. He wants to know how long it will take him to make $800 in interest. Right? So, Oscar, talk with your team. Is there a way that we could figure out, and I don't think we need the graph to go that far because my graph doesn't go up to 800. How could we figure out how long it will take Oscar to make $800? You're supposed to be talking with your team. So I'm gonna come over to you. Ask a few of your shout out. And how does that relate to your? Debit cards don't normally have rewards. Because if you pay it off every month, you don't have to pay interest. So you just get the rewards. So you get